Welcome to Engedrian. If this is your first time listening, or even if you are returning, be sure to follow us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you are enjoying our adventure. Let's see what happens next. As the sound of the dragon's roar fades and the last of the sand settles, the 8 kobolds standing around the fire see the dead dragon and look around curiously. Fodinus and Inisel brandish their swords. The rest of the party moves with Malaysia towards the camp with the full-size Gorinthos behind them. The kobolds drop their spears and short swords and back away, bowing low. The party receives 600 experience points each. Fodinus and Inisel move quickly, throwing their weapons into the fire. Case and Peace herd the kobolds with their spears against the short wall of the foundation. Inisel and Theophania tie their wrists and ankles. Circa and Gotro move away from the others, still holding their weapons and smiling. Inisel makes a nature check, advantage, assisted by Theophania. Rolls 24.
Well, having seen 2 of these from Sentinelfuse before, I have a pretty good idea of what can be harvested. Fodinus and Theophania, can you assist?
They nod and begin dissecting the dragon. Theophania and Fodinus quickly identify the bag of holding, similar to the one they found on the black dragon wormling, and hand it to Malaysia to examine. As Malaysia begins fumbling around, a shadow crosses his face and he looks up. The lonely lady descends towards the party and lands just south of the camp. Malaysia smiles and takes the bag and climbs up the ladder that has just descended.
Captain, probably best if you anchor the ship and come down to help us. There's quite a lot going on.
He inverts the bag of holding and pours its contents onto the deck and begins examining it. Malaysia receives 6,482 gold pieces, 868 platinum pieces, 12 gems worth 1,000 gold pieces each, 1 fire opal, 2 opals, 1 emerald, 3 star sapphire, 1 black opal, 1 blue sapphire, 2 yellow sapphire, and 1 star ruby. 1 potion of supreme healing, 1 arrow plus 3. He gives the arrow to Theophania, the potion to Umgren, and puts the rest in his bag of holding. He gives the chameleon bag of holding to Gorinthos. The captain and crew secure the lonely lady and climb down to join the others. The Zorn have the kobolds surrounded and are keeping them secure against the stone wall. Circa and Gotro are talking quietly with Gorinthos, who is curled into a ball laying on the ground. Umgren, Peace, and Case are looking at Case's maps of the ruins.
Well, it seems like you were busy.
The captain pats Umgren on the back and smiles.
There is an ancient mine under the huge tree, which is safely being guarded by that amethyst dragon and a family of basilisks. There are some tunnels that collapsed that we could not explore, but they can wait. Some source of magic produced that tree, and I'm not sure we have seen it yet.
Aye, the tree is large and we did not get too close. However, we could fly around it with the assistance of the dragon to investigate.
He pauses and looks over at the amethyst dragon.
I assume she's friendly.
Yes, a refugee of Sentinelfuse, in fact. Which reminds me, Gonthal.
The large Zorn moves over to the Umgren and the captain.
Can you please find out from the kobolds exactly how they got here, and why here? And lastly, are there others in the area?
Grunthal flexes his claws, twiddles his toe claws, and then produces his macabre smile. His large eye winks and he returns to the kobolds. Circa and Gotro join him as Gorinthos stands and moves closer to the captain, Umgren, Case, and Peace.
Hello, sir. I am Gorinthos. I assume you are the captain of that vessel?
Yes, my lady. It is a pleasure to meet you. I hope you are well and unharmed. It seems you are being pursued.
The captain nods and bows deeply.
I was. I do not know to what extent, but this small group at least will not report my whereabouts.
She smiles and lays her head on the ground between them.
And who, my lady, would care so dearly about your whereabouts?
The captain pulls a small cloth from his belt and wipes a bit of dust from the dragon's snout.
I am not a very good student of history, and I lived a sheltered life before I escaped. But I can tell you Sentinelfuse is not what people of this world think. The dragon moon, that pearl in the night sky, is not what the people of this world think either. I am a gem dragon, as you can tell, and we are quite rare in Engedrian. In fact, there may be less than a dozen of us here, all of whom, except me, are currently in Saturnalfuse. There are no chromatic dragons or metallic dragons in Saturnalfuse, but there are such creatures in this world. I have never met them, but I read an ancient manuscript about the metallic dragons who live far to the north, secluded from the world. They are in hiding, but no one really knows why. And the chromatic dragons, they are the true masters of this world, plotting and scheming in their secluded concaves, nearly unknown to the humanoids or even the Underdark. What dark plot they progress or what it ultimately will mean, I have no idea. What I can tell you is that every egg laid by a gem dragon in Saturnalfuse is taken from us. We are less than a dozen, and have been so for more than 60 as Varana. I gave up being their egg-laying slave, and of course, this place called to me.
What would someone do with gem dragon eggs?
Umgurn studies the face of the amethyst dragon with concern.
That is the question.
Gorenthos smiles and closes her eyes. Inicel, Theophania, and Fodinus complete their salvaging of the green dragon carcass. Inicel receives raw dragon meat, 24 pieces, 60 pounds, young dragon blood, 5 vials, young dragon teeth, 35 total, young dragon bone times 6, young green dragon horn, young green dragon scales, and young green dragon breath pouch. She gives the meat to Malaysia to cook, adds 5 teeth and 5 scales to her net adornment, gives the breath pouch to Theophania, puts the horn and bone in Malaysia's chest of preserving, and the rest in her bag of holding. Grenthal returns with what could be a giddy smile and tugs on Umgurn's arm.
I have had a splendid conversation with the little fleshy dragon men. Serka and Gotro, as you know, are from Oldestal, and as you have said you will help them return. Of the other 8, 4 others are also from Oldestal, stolen as younglings but long ago. They also wish to return to Oldestal. The remaining 4 are from Polyphony, the mountains to the southeast of Polyphony. They were sold as slaves to the wizards of Polyphony who, in turn, sold them to Saturnalfuse. There are many creatures in Saturnalfuse, but very few are native. Most of the native populations have been eradicated.
Case, Umgurn, and Peace stare blankly at Grunthal.
These kobolds arrived here on the back of the dragon. 4 dragons with 20 kobolds each were sent to find Gorenthos in the Blight. Yes, 4. And that means they will see the rebirth of life in the Blight. They will send more.
Malaysia had climbed down the ladder and rejoined the group when Grunthal returned with his report to translate.
But, Malaysia, we know they were planning to come anyway. Maybe they will move up their timetable, or maybe they will stick to it. As long as we don't cross paths with anyone from Saturnalfuse that returns to Saturnalfuse, we should be safe.
Umgurn folds his arms across his chest and frowns. Inicel, Theophania, and Fodinus, listening in, all seem to be visibly tense at the thought of 3 more dragons.
Uggs, this party without King Jaw, won't that draw their interest?
Peace stands leaning against their staff.
Don't think so. You see, according to the kobolds, their master told them that if they didn't come back with Gorenthos, they shouldn't come back at all.
Grunthal smiles his macabre smile and bounces slightly.
And who did they say was their master?
Fodinus moves close to Grunthal and scratches him on the shoulder.
They would not say quick bugbear thieves. They seemed to be afraid to name them. It did not seem negotiable. But they did say that Gorenthos was a valuable source of dragon eggs for their master. That is all.
Grunthal leans towards Fodinus to get more scratching surface area.
Perhaps when all of these kobolds are safely back in Oldestal, they will be more willing to speak freely.
Umgurn nods and begins to walk away.
Don't think so, Umgurn.
Grunthal bounces slightly.
They were afraid to name them or talk about other aspects of Saturnalfuse because they thought they would die.
From speaking about it?
As Umgurn trails off, Theophania steps forward, nodding.
There are certain master-servant magics that were developed in Polyphony that can prevent servants from speaking about certain things, or they die. My father taught me about this long ago. The alliance between Polyphony and Saturnalfuse is well known, but it seems they may be sharing their magical secrets.
The centaur folds her arms across her chest and sighs. Inesel moves close to the captain and places her claw on his forearm.
Captain, we have quite a bit harvested from this dragon that we need to get on the ship and preserved. Then I think we may need a rest before we tackle that tree.
Inesel walks towards the ladder. Umgern nods and makes a "let's move it up to the ship" gesture with his hands. Grunthal, Doug, Burrow, Boar, and Garinthos move close together as the kobolds and the party make their way to the ship. The Zorn wave and drop into the ground. Garinthos takes to the sky, makes a few loops around the tree, and disappears under the base of the roots. Once on board, Inesel, with help from Theophania and Fodinas, secure all of the harvest from the dragon to preserve it, along with all of the other items in Malaysia's chest, and then joins the others for a meal. The kobolds settle in quickly and tear into their meal as if they haven't eaten in weeks. The crew take a few of them at a time and show them various tasks and duties on the ship, which they readily agree to do. The captain takes the ship up to the top tower fragment and secures it. The party takes a long rest. Isvara rises across the dusty plain to the east and illuminates the great tree in a slow, glowing fall of light from the top to the base. Everyone stands on the deck, fully rested, watching the light play across the enormous tree's branches. The captain gives a signal to the crew, and the lonely lady lifts off from the tower and moves towards the lowest branches of the tree. Garinthos emerges from a lower branch and takes to the sky with Doug on her back, waving furiously at the ship. As the ship gets close to the tree, everyone stands on the side of the deck and watches the tree carefully. The party makes perception checks. Roll 22, 6, 21, 6, 19, 24, and 20. Case and Umgern are distracted by the amazing depth and breadth of the branches and the glistening light reflecting off the leaves and branches. Theophania can see many things moving among the branches on several levels, but cannot make out any details. Inesel, Malaysia, Peace, and Fodinas easily spot creatures moving among the branches and limbs. Some of them are small and flitting, while others are large and slithering. As the ship and the dragon continues to survey the tree, moving up the tree's height over time, Inesel can see distinctly various Feywild creatures, some of which wave to her. Malaysia notices several pixies, nymphs, and dryads. Peace and Fodinas also see the Feywild creatures, and among the branches, the glistening rainbow reflection of something large among them. Garinthos lands gently on the deck of the ship.
My children, what have you seen? I note many Feywild creatures living among the enormous branches.
Yes, we see them.
Peace walks over to Garinthos and aligns their arm with her eye line, pointing to the rainbow reflections.
And there's that.
Ah, I see. Excuse me for a moment.
She takes off from the ship's deck, leaving Doug on the deck bouncing with glee, launches high into the sky, then soars down to enter the tree branches near the multicolored display. After a few moments, she emerges with another creature behind her that looks somewhat like a dragon, but is the most miraculous spectrum of colors. They both return to the deck of the ship and land.
My friends, please meet Hevim and Dradhunash. They are what you might call a mirage dragon. They are the master of this tree, and all the little fey creatures we saw are their companions and in service to Hevim.
As Garinthos concludes, a cloud of colorful, fluttering lights lands all around the deck, and when their eyes adjust, everyone sees dozens of fairy dragons, wings folded, staring at the party. Garinthos, standing close to Hevim, entwines her neck with theirs, and their faces brush close. They unwind themselves and settle close to each other on the deck.
We are delighted to meet you, fleshlings, and we are sure you have questions about this tree and how it came to be here. And it has been so long that we have had the company of another dragon.
Hevim bows their head to the party and settles into a tight bundle of wings, legs, and tail on the deck, with just their head floating above on a long, slender neck. Garinthos snuggles closer and smiles.
The great tree, or Shajarat Izima, as she is called in the Feywild, is nearly 10,000 Isvarana in age. For most of that time, she was present only in the Feywild and was the guardian of the forest here and all around this area. By design, there were no passages to the Feywild within 10 days' journey of Izima, because the Archfey and their court feared the machinations of outsiders. She remained hidden for nearly 3 ages of this world, and then the darkness of Centenofuse spread their seeds of death and fire everywhere, killing everything. Izima suffered greatly with the loss of her forest children and the fleshling creatures that dwelled there. It was a dark time. I came to Shajarat Izima shortly before that crisis, and witnessed the effect it had on her and the Feywild. The deadly seeds of Centenofuse could not penetrate to the Feywild, thankfully, but the loss of life was the same as a gushing bleed. We gathered our Feywild companions in the tree and nourished her with our magic and our souls in hopes of surviving the apocalypse. It took hundreds of Isvarana. But not that long ago, something miraculous began to occur. Where we had seen only blighted desert and the foundation of the once great city of Hespa, there were small shrubs and grasses growing, then trees, and then, as you see it now. But something more miraculous occurred. As the new-growth forest flourished, Izima began to feel it and reached out to it. Though we have maintained her for hundreds of Isvarana, the rebirth of the soil reinvigorated her in a new way, and the barrier between the Feywild broke away. Izima now exists simultaneously in both the Feywild and here. If any of us in the great tree descend to the ground, we are in the Feywild. We are only able to join you because your ship is flying. If you were to come into the tree, you would look out and see only the Feywild. When you leave, you would be back in your world. It is truly incredible.
Heaven pauses, sighs, and rubs their head against Gorinthos' neck.
But the great tree is now visible in this world. Aren't you afraid that others will come?
Malage moves close to the mirage dragon and strokes one of its iridescent claws with his hand.
Ah, you are the clever little fire genasi. We are what in your vernacular you would call an ancient dragon. In fact, at one point, we were a golden dragon, and our kin, who live far to the north, were in league with elves an age ago to protect this world. But we are now a mirage dragon, and, being a very old and powerful one, have certain talents. We can create illusions all around the area, suggest that visitors see something they don't, and, overall, keep tabs on any sentient being that comes close. In that way, you see, the great tree is only visible to those we choose to reveal it to. And we chose you as soon as we became aware of you. Goodness and righteousness are always to be trusted, in our opinion.
The dragon smiles broadly. They reach under their wing and bring forth a peculiar wand which appears to be made of gold and is covered from its base to near the top in brightly colored crystal baubles of various shades. The tip quarter of the wand has 9 small gold protrusions jutting out in various directions, and on the end of each is another brightly colored bauble of crystal.
This is a very special wand, Malage Ermdale. It is powerful, but also an agent of chaos. The wizard that you called Inokron had it in his possession when he arrived here. He, of course, only saw the regular trees and towers and found the mine. He was unaware of the great tree. While he slept near its base, our fairy dragons relieved him of it, both physically and mentally. We are aware of your master in Pathelia, a great wizard, an immense friend to the Feywild. We wish to burden you, little one, with delivering this wand to him for safekeeping. He will be able to study it and learn more about its prior owner, possibly their current whereabouts. Yes, we are aware of his stupid trick with the bag of holding in the chest of the organized arcanist. What a waste of magic wealth and history, simply to escape.
Malage takes the wand carefully, looks at it for a few moments, and then places it inside his bag of holding gingerly. Umgern steps forward.
Eltham, great protector of Izima, master of this Feywild conflux, I must know what you think will happen. When we return to Pathelia, King Talia will send people here to reclaim the city, rebuild it, and fortify it against Centenofuse. He has likely already begun with Scylla. Can your magic protect the great tree from so many curious minds? Spellcasters will be among them, from whom such an arcane thought will be hard to hide.
Umgern moves next to Malage and places a hand on his shoulder.
Umgern, Best of the Drow, Paladin of the Light, we must agree with you. Our magic is strong, but not infinite. Corinthos and the Zorn can help the settlers with the mines below, especially the collapsed areas, which will be of the most value to them. The basilisk will need to be freed back into the Underdark at some point, but the Great Tree will be a challenge.
Heaven shakes their head and sighs deeply. Peace moves closer to the dragon and leaps lightly into the air, landing on their neck and quickly scaling their back to sit upon their head. Heaven rolls their eyes up at the strange little cat person and smiles.
Kalia. He is a great wizard, it's true, but he also has Inik on his side. Between them, we believe they can assist you in making the illusion of the Great Tree's absence permanent.
Peace moves around in a circle and then settles into a flat spot on the dragon's head between its ears. They begin to purr loudly. Inacel chuckles and moves close to the dragon's foreclaws, which are crossed and resting on the deck.
There is another way, Heaven.
The dragon looks at the lizard folk druid curiously.
Which is?
Izima chose to connect with this world. She chose to be in the space between, to be close to this forest. She can choose to go back.
Inacel folds her arms and smiles.
She can choose to go back?
The dragon seems to chew on the words for a few moments and then suddenly smiles.
Of course, brilliant. But I would expect nothing less from a Zalani of the Great Swamp.
Wait, what?
Malage looks up at the dragon, suddenly with a saddened look.
I am afraid it is what you think, little Genasi. You wear your thoughts close to your heart. If we, all of the Feywild creatures dwelling in the tree, return to the Feywild and leave the tree alone here, she will be drawn back to us. Why didn't we think of that ages ago? We have been coddling her to help her survive. We must force her to choose to return to the Feywild.
Heaven smiles at the party and then looks very saddened and low as their eyes meet Corinthos. The group becomes deathly quiet except for a low, gentle sob from Malage, upon whom the reality of this action has dawned fully.
It's not fair.
He wipes tears from his eyes, which burst into flame on his sleeves for a moment and then vanish.
Life is not fair, little one. I spent so much of my life living in fear of dragons and trying to escape them. To even meet one who is of such kindness is a gift, even if for a fleeting moment.
Corinthos nuzzles Malage's belly with her maw. He smiles and laughs a bit.
Our Lady Corinthos, we believe you should stay until Kalia has claimed this area and made it safe. But then you must leave. The Zorn can help with the mines. You must go to the north, to the land of my ancestors. You will find a small conclave of metallic dragons hidden away in the mist. They hide from the fleshlings of this world for their own safety, but are on their misty plane to protect the fleshlings from something even more dangerous. And to assist you, we will help you cross into the Feywild when the time comes and make the journey safely to the mists. Can you promise me that you will do this?
Heaven looks sternly at Corinthos, who seems uncertain.
Yes, I will do it.
She sighs heavily with the darkness behind her eyes. Within a few hours, the party packs and secures everything on the ship and is ready to depart for Sane, due east of Hespa. Malage sets up his field oven and smoking chamber to process all of the dragon meat, refilling his coffers with 40 pounds of dragon jerky and 20 pounds of cooked dragon meat. The captain double-checks the supplies with Umgurn and assures him that they will have plenty of resources to explore Sane and then return to Pithilia safely. Case, Theophania, and Inacel finalize the map of the ruins with as many notes as they can remember, specifically removing any mention of the Great Tree. The party watches Corinthos and Heaven circling in the sky and talking intimately on the branches of the tree. Eventually, Corinthos takes to the sky alone, dives deep, and vanishes under the great tree's roots. The ship moves off of its landing spot and high into the sky. The land between Hespa and Sane appears to be mostly flat desert plain, leaving Hespa in view for a long time. As the last light of Isvara began to disappear behind the far western sky, the great tree faded and vanished from the horizon. The journey to Sane takes longer than the party expects, having moved so quickly across Pithilius before. Captain Fishdwain explains during lunch the second day of their journey.
Aye, The Lonely Lady, like all of the flying ships of the king, has its own arcane power source that magically drives us and steers us and keeps us in the air. But the speed with which the ship moves is altered by the wind. You see that we have sails and flaps above to catch the wind, just like on the water. There are enough differentials in most of Pithilius, especially when there are mountains, to move us quickly, but this stretch of land is flat and dry. The wind will pick up as we approach the coast. For now, we have to just keep the course and be patient. But I expect day after tomorrow this time, we will be at the location on your map. That is, if I am any sort of navigator. He smiles and returns to the helm. Given that they have at least 48 hours to do what they want, the party decides to be on the lookout in shifts of 2, one on the deck and one high in the sails, for 6 hours at a time. The rest engage in various preparatory activities or recreational pursuits. Fodinas continues to teach Malaysia how to play various gambling games, at which the Genasi is becoming quite adept. After dinner on the first day, despite the cold moon turn upon them, the air on the ship becomes stale and warm. Fodinas strips down to his small clothes, in this case just a loincloth held by a cord of leather, before they begin playing another gambling game. After Malaysia has beaten Fodinas 10 games in a row, Fodinas looks up from the pile of coins and cards.
It's like I have no idea how to play this game.
Fodinas scratches his head. Malaysia looks at him curiously and frowns.
Fodinas and Malaysia make intelligence checks. Roll 11 and 18.
Fodinas looks at his clothes, neatly folded next to him, with his tunic on top bearing the shiny brooch, a gift from Peace. Malaysia looks at Fodinas and the brooch and jumps up with a smile.
Fodinas, put on your tunic with the brooch.
Fodinas does so rather wearily.
Now let's play.
Fodinas proceeds to win the next 5 games easily. He fondles the brooch with one finger.
What is this magic?
Fodinas pulls off his tunic again and lays it on the rest with his clothes.
Well, as I told you, it gives you better luck with your gambling skills, but I think it might somehow be cursed. You can only gamble with it on. If you're not wearing it, you forget how to play, or just have terrible luck.
Malaysia picks up the brooch and looks at the die engraved with the runes carefully.
Malaysia makes an investigation check and an arcana check. Rolls 25 and 14.
Here, see? These small symbols on the dice are not numbers or symbols, they are arcane runes, but I can't really read them well. The next time we are in Pithilia, we should have a rune master read them for you.
Inacel, having secured all of the perishables from the dragon and the cloaker, decides it would be safer for everyone if they lock away in secure chests in the bowel of the ship anything that they don't need for their venture into Sanye. She goes to each person, one at a time, and has them dump out and reorganize their bags and backpacks. Fodinas calls her a demanding, overbearing mother he never had. Inacel laughs and waits for him to dump his bag. Malaysia, when it's his turn, calls over Theophania.
I can add these crystals to your arrows, as well as that dragon breath pouch that you have.
He pulls out his tinker and smith's tools. She smiles and hands him 7 arrows quickly as he gets to work. Inacel smiles and reaches into the storage chest and pulls out the red dragon wormling breath pouch.
You can use this one as well.
After an hour or so, and having already had experience in the task, Malaysia hands Theophania the 8 arrows with their upgraded damage profile. Theophania is very excited about the increase in her repertoire of arrows and thanks Inacel and Malaysia profusely. Umgren spends almost all of the time on the journey to Sane, practicing with his scimitar on several practice dummies that Malaysia makes from spare wood and parts.
Umgren makes a dexterity check. Rolls 7.
Despite hours of practice, Umgren still feels like his skill with the blade is lacking and resigns to continue practicing as well as seek professional training when they return to Pithilia. Case and Peace spend most of their time together during the journey, with Case exercising frequently, Peace making tea for Case and everyone else, and a ritual every evening of listening to Peace recite poems and prose after dinner. Case teaches the kobolds several different offensive and defensive fighting techniques, and Peace instructs them in more efficient and effective ways to use their spears. Although their skills improve quickly, they seem nervous about returning to the ground of the Blight. Captain Fishdwain gives them each a series of ship duties which they prove to be quite adept at completing, including scrambling up the masts and over the sides to check moorings, weapons, and ropes. On the morning of the 4th day of slow travel, the captain rings a small bell he keeps next to the steering system, which is an indication for everyone to come to the top of the deck. As they gather, it quickly becomes clear why he called them. On the horizon, in silhouette from the rising of Isvara, is a cluster of large hills, the largest of which seems to glow on its own. The 10 kobolds, who happen to have been up in the sails all the time, peer out at the hill, murmur among themselves, and scramble down to the deck. Circa moves to the captain, bows, and looks up sadly.
Captain, we are, as you know, kobolds. Our place in life was often to serve dragons, but our people found a new peace in Oldestal. We were stolen from there and forced to be minions of dragons once again. I tell you all of this to bestow our collective insight, which is this. That is a volcano, and it is not natural. Something hideous will be at the heart of that. We are afraid we are cowards in that regard.
The captain frowns deeply and pats the kobold on the head gingerly. He looks up at Umgurn, who shares his concern. Within an hour or so, Isvara has risen sufficiently that the hills are more evident. A central large hill, rising at least the height of 4 great oak trees from the desert floor, has a large pool of lava at its top with small rivulets of glowing fire streaming down the sides and pooling below. There are dense trees growing all around the central hill. At the periphery, 3 very large hills are surrounded by rubble and dead trees.
The party make perception, nature, and insight checks. Roll 9, 10, 19, 16, 6, 19, 8. And roll 19, 21, 12, 13, 4, 16, and 18. And finally roll 18, 10, 4, 2, 12, 16, and 18.
Case and Theophania see among the trees and rocks several colorful stone parapets and rooftops which appear crushed or trapped within the stone and trees.
Look, there!
Case points at several of the roofs and towers that seem consumed by the ground around it. Theophania nods and uses the captain's spyglass to study them further.
They appear to be ancient and mostly destroyed, but that colorful green to the roof appears to be moss or lichenous growth. This must have been Sane long ago?
Fodinus, Inicel, and Peace study the shape of the central hill, the conditions of the 3 large rocks, and the debris scattered around. Fodinus and Peace put their heads together briefly and chat in whispers. After a few moments, they include Inicel, who nods in agreement, then turns to the group.
Fodinus and Peace have the heart of this. That central volcano of lava was, at one time, larger. When it erupted at some point, those other 3 large pieces and the other rubble was dispersed all around. With the growth of the trees being close to the mountain, and only dead trees around the large rubble, we think this area had begun to recover, like Hesper, but then the volcano erupted recently, and it may still be dangerous. However, in keeping with the kobold's assessment, the presence of a volcano here, directly beneath an ancient city in a flat desert, is certainly bizarre and likely unnatural.
Inicel pauses and waits for the others to look more at the approaching formation. Malage borrows the spyglass from Theophania. After several minutes, he turns back to the group, excited.
Look, at the base of the volcano, there is some sort of entrance, maybe a mine or part of the ruins.
Umgurn takes the spyglass and surveys the area for many minutes. The captain stands next to him, sighing loudly.
Yes, Fishtwain, I agree. This is certainly a dangerous and unstable situation. If we can sample some of the stones at the periphery and the larger pieces, perhaps we can get a chronology of this eruption or a clue to what might have caused it, and if it's a continued threat. And whatever that entrance leads to, it was probably destroyed by the eruption or will be soon. I'm not sure I can ask this group to risk this.
Umgurn looks away from the glowing mountain and back at the group.
What do you think?
I am not afraid of fire.
Malage steps forward and leans up on the railing looking at the austere formation. Everyone smiles or laughs nervously.
You may be fire-resistant, little one, but not everyone is. Moreover, whatever might be living near that volcano is likely immune or resistant to fire. You're going to have a time fighting them, no?
Umgurn pats him on the shoulder and waits for the others to comment. Malage suddenly frowns and seems discouraged. He pulls out his wands and flourishes them simultaneously.
I'll be all right.
The party votes for exploring the volcano. Roll d20. 1 to 10 equals no. 11 to 20 equals yes. Rolls are 8, 19, 17, 20, 11, 16, and 18. 6 yeas and 1 nay.
Fodinus looks at the parley sadly for a moment, and then smiles half-heartedly.
This seems very dangerous to me, and I'm never one to shy away from danger. As long as we proceed carefully, I will agree to go.
Of course we will.
Malaysia slaps Fodinus on the mid-back, the highest point he can reach from the deck, and smiles.
If a random lava bomb ejects from that beast, it could be the end of the lonely lady in a flash. I will drop you, but I feel we should keep her at a distance and near the water. There, due west of the formation, the sea comes close to the shore. We will land there and wait for your signal after we drop you at the edge of the forest. Besides, I have a mind to teach these kobolds to fish. Fish Dwayne nods solemnly and returns to the steering apparatus. Within a few hours, and shortly before midday, the party watches as the lonely lady cruises away from them towards the seashore. The spot where they disembarked includes one of the building ruins along the path to the entrance spotted by Malaysia, as well as many boulders and stones. They look carefully at the stones and rocks which appear to have recently fallen to the ground, crushing vegetation underneath.
The party makes investigation checks. Roll 7, 14, 8, 9, 15, 8, and 15.
Despite considerable time looking at several boulders, their surfaces and composition, most everyone just seems to appreciate that the crushed vegetation was recent. Umgren and Peace, however, look a bit more carefully and note that on most of the boulders, one side is smooth, almost like glass, while the other side is rough. Though the vegetation appears crushed, it does not appear burned, and there is evidence of some growth around and onto the boulders.
These are definitely rocks ejected from the volcanic explosion, but it has been some weeks, I think. Note the new growth and the lack of burned areas.
Peace nods in agreement and scratches one of the boulder's rough sides with their claws.
See how the rocks break off easily? This was not very solid stone, which explains why so much of it was blown away from the volcano. Malaysia, this smooth glassy side is not quite the obsidian that you covet, but it is shiny and glass-like. Would you like some?
Malaysia looks carefully at the stone and smiles with a nod. Case, not hesitating, walks over to the nearest boulder, accepts a hammer from Umgern, and smashes the glassy surface. Hundreds of shards of multicolored glass-like stone break away and coalesce on the side of the boulder. Malaysia picks through them carefully and gathers 30 pieces and places them in his bag.
Malaysia receives 30 pieces of pseudo-obsidian.
Thanks.
Case laughs as he hands Umgern's hammer back to him. The party continues through the forest towards the roof of one of the buildings buried in the ground. After less than an hour, the building ruin comes into view. From a distance, it appears to be made of white or gray stone cut into blocks and stacked in a staggered pattern to create solid support. The first visible wall of the building has an arched window with a tree branch growing through it. As the party gets closer, some ancient metal trimmings that are rusted or otherwise caked in deteriorating buildup are more evident. When they are at the side of the building, it is clear that it was a much larger and possibly quite tall, but has been almost entirely consumed by the ground around it. As Theophania has noted, the roof is a rainbow of patina, lichen, debris, and rust.
Well, whatever this was, it isn't anymore.
Fodinus scrapes the stone of the building with his dagger.
Can I just crawl to the window and take a look?
Malaysia already has his hands on the window's ledge.
Theophania, please tie a rope around the genasi before he falls into a very, very deep hole.
Fodinus throws her a long length of rope. She laughs and makes a few knots, securing a rope harness around him. Malaysia crawls over the edge and begins descending, with Theophania and Fodinus holding the rope. Malaysia carefully descends into the tower which, despite the tree growing out of it, is mostly intact internally. There are not markings on the walls or any residual structures that aren't stone. After about 4 arm spans, he reaches the bottom of the building and is standing in a floor of dirt, debris, bones, shattered rocks, and leaves. The building is circular at this point and is about 4 arm spans across. On one wall, there is an archway door leading away from the building. He peers down the hall.
Malaysia makes a perception and investigation check. Rolls 11 and 25.
The blackness of the tunnel, although easily penetrated by Malaysia's dark vision, revealing a stone passageway with some sort of metallic structures to one side, about 3 arm spans down, is unmatched by its quiet staleness. Malaysia can hear nothing to the point that his ears are ringing with the silence. Unable to see the details of the metal structure well, he produces a ball of flame in his hand and hurls it towards the opposite end of the tunnel for a better view. The ball strikes the stony end of the tunnel, which appears to have been an archway door into which stone has collapsed and is obstructed. As the light flashes, the metal structure is easily seen and appears to be a bright, shining suit of armor. Malaysia smiles, thinking only magical armor would endure in this rusted-out place. He takes a step forward, but freezes when the suit of armor begins moving towards him.
Malaysia and animated armor roll for initiative. Animated armor moves into melee, makes 2 slam attacks, rolls 17 and 22 for 9 bludgeoning damage.
The shiny armor covers the distance between it and Malaysia quickly and uses its momentum to slam into the little genasi twice.
Malaysia uses 3 charges for Wand of Lightning Bolt, rolls 35 lightning damage. Animated armor dex saving throw DC 15 is a 6.
Malaysia, recognizing he may be in trouble, whips out his wand of lightning bolts and fires it directly into the chest of armor, which sends it flying back down the hallway, smashing it into the wall and shattering the frame into a dozen pieces of metal.
Malaysia receives 200 experience points.
When the metal pieces of armor stop moving and the threat seems averted, Malaysia checks his rope length and jaunts down to the destroyed creature. Large pieces of shiny armor lay around, and only the chest plate where his lightning bolt struck it was shattered and scorched. He collects all of the pieces of metal into his bag and a small shiny brass rune with a slight magical residue on it. He produces a ball of flame in his hand and looks around carefully.
Malaysia makes an investigation check, DC 20, rolls 11.
Once the metal remains of the armor were cleaned up, Malaysia sees nothing more in the space or any other area to further explore. He heads back up to the tower walls, giving a pull on the rope so the party knows to assist him. At the top, he climbs through the window and begins removing the ropes.
Well?
Fodinas looks at him expectantly.
Malaysia makes a deception check versus Fodina's insight check. Rolls 13 versus 7.
Nothing really. Just an old, dusty, crushed tower.
Fodinas nods at the genasi and smiles.
Okay then, let's get moving.
The party gathers and begins the walk towards the entrance that they know is in the distance. After another hour, the large archway, seen from the ship, becomes visible. At this distance, it is clear that there are several entrances into the side of the mountain, for which the large archway is the initial gateway. There are 2 entrances to the north and 1 entrance to the west. The ground and entrances are overgrown with bushes and moss, and a great canopy of trees and moss hide the entrances from the air, save the first archway.
Well, now what?
Peace moves to the head of the party, sits cross-legged on the ground with their spear across their lap, and begins purring quietly while studying each of the entrances. Inisel moves close to each entrance along with Malaysia and peers inside, smelling and listening. Umgern moves close to Case and begins discussing a mapping strategy. Fodinas darkens his daggers, wearing his all-black clothing, and vanishes into the north-left entrance while Theophania stands at the entrance with an arrow notched. After only a few minutes, Fodinas emerges and slips into the next entrance without a word. Theophania repositions herself near the overgrown arch and waits. Peace stands and joins Case and Umgern. Malaysia and Inisel murmur quietly to each other about what they think they might smell. Sister emerges from Inisel's pocket and scurries down the first tunnel. Filigree slides out of Theophania's pocket and follows Fodinas. Case nods to Peace, who is pointing at the familiars, and Hestia jumps from his pocket and moves down the last entrance silently. After another 10 minutes or so, Fodinas emerges from the second entrance and vanishes down the third. While waiting for him to return, the others all move together, and Inisel, Case, and Theophania connect directly to their familiars and begin reciting what they see to Peace and Malaysia, who make notes and sketch on parchment.
Long corridor, many rooms off either side. Well, fragments of rooms. Walls are collapsed and crushed. Floors are somewhat intact. Some residual pieces of furniture or pots, maybe.
Inisel, relating what Sister is seeing, pauses and then opens her eyes.
She searched her limit. She's coming back.
Shorter stone corridor, some excavations to the right with rooms with intact walls. Further north, more natural tunnels. Crystals. A turn to the north and a long corridor with a low glow at the end.
Theophania opens her eyes and nods.
That's the limit of what she could see.
Excavations to the north and south off the main corridor. The remains of camps or lodgings on the right. More preserved walls to the north. A bend in the corridor going north.
Case opens his eyes and sighs deeply.
It's a big place. That was all Hestia could see.
As Peace and Malaysia finish their sketches, Case assists them. Fodinus returns from the last tunnel as the three familiars emerge and return to their masters.
This is a very strange place. The first tunnel to the left going north looks like a series of rooms or parts of rooms that collapse down into the earth. The walls are of sheer stone and the ceilings come to a point as if the stone collapsed into it. At the very end is a fragmented cave that is very warm. I think it's close to the volcano bed. But there are lots of cracks and crevices throughout. Anything could be in there. The second tunnel to the north on the right is completely different. It is a natural tunnel for a bit, but has clearly been carefully excavated in several places. An old cave system with crystals is there, but I didn't explore it. I tried to go further in the main tunnel, but there was something in there, large and loud. The last tunnel to the east is the strangest. I think some of the excavations connect with this other tunnel, but there are a series of carefully dug out and supported rooms that were used for camping or as lodging. I heard noises not far from the tunnels going north, so I came back.
Fodinus squats down and begins breathing deeply. Thank you for visiting Engedrian. Don't forget to find us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you're enjoying our adventure. We can't wait to hear what happens next.